The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a mechanical hiss that echoed through the crystalline halls. Ambassador Marcus Chun walked forward with measured steps, his polished shoes clicking against the alien marble floor. He carried himself with the dignity expected of Earth's first representative to the Greater Galactic Assembly, even though his heart hammered in his chest like a caged bird desperate for freedom. The chamber itself defied human architectural understanding. Walls curved impossibly upward, meeting at angles that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Holographic star maps floated overhead, displaying the territories of 100 different species, each marked with symbols that humanity had only begun to understand. Earth's tiny blue marker seemed insignificant among the vast empires that stretched across spiral arms of the galaxy. Marcus adjusted his formal suit, a deliberate choice to wear human fashion rather than the standardized diplomatic robes offered by the Council. His wife had pressed it herself before he left, her hands trembling as she smoothed out invisible wrinkles. His son, barely 18, had stood in the doorway of their new Geneva apartment, trying to look brave despite the tears threatening to spill from his eyes. "Remember why you're doing this," his son had said, voice steady despite his youth. "For all of us." Now, standing before beings that had conquered stars when humanity still thought fire was magic, Marcus held on to those words like a lifeline. The council members sat in their designated positions, each species displaying their own version of what humans might call attention. The Korvax delegates, resembling giant mantises made of living crystal, clicked their mandibles in what their cultural guides assured was polite acknowledgement. The Threnodidae, whose forms seemed to shift between solid and gaseous states, pulsed with colors that supposedly conveyed complex emotions. At the center of it all sat High Arbitrator Zelptar of the Dominion. His species had been the first to achieve faster-than-light travel, and they never let anyone forget it. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, covered in scales that shifted from deep purple to midnight black, Zelptar looked down at Marcus with 4 eyes that held no warmth, only calculation. "Ambassador Chun of Earth," Zelptar's voice resonated through the chamber, each word translated instantly by the neural implants all diplomats received. "You have requested this emergency session. The Council recognizes your right to speak." Marcus stepped forward to the designated speaking circle, a ring of light that would amplify his words to the assembly. He pulled up his prepared remarks on his retinal display, but decided to speak from the heart instead. These beings respected strength, and reading from notes would only reinforce their view of humanity as weak newcomers. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Marcus began, his voice carrying surprising strength. "I come before you today not just as a representative of Earth, but as a voice for justice. For the past 3 years, since humanity's induction into this assembly, we have faithfully adhered to every treaty, every regulation, every demand placed upon us." Several delegates shifted in their seats. The Vorthan ambassador's tentacles writhed in what Marcus had learned was curiosity. "Good." He had their attention. "We opened our borders to your inspection teams. We submitted our technology for review. We accepted limitations on our military development that no other member species had to endure during their probationary period." Marcus paused, letting his words sink in. "We did all this in good faith, believing in the promise of the Galactic Council, that all member species would be treated with equality and respect." High Arbitrator Zelptar's scales rippled, a sign of impatience. "Ambassador, the Council is aware of Earth's compliance. If you have a specific grievance—" "I do," Marcus interrupted, knowing the breach of protocol would shock them. Several gasps, and their alien equivalents echoed through the chamber. 3 days ago, a Dominion patrol ship entered Earth's sovereign space without authorization. When our defensive platforms hailed them according to proper protocol, they ignored our communications. When we sent a diplomatic vessel to intercept and inquire about their purpose, they destroyed it. The chamber erupted in a chaos of sounds, clicks, hisses, harmonic tones, and subsonic rumbles as each species expressed surprise or disbelief. Zelptar raised one of his 4 arms, and silence fell like a heavy curtain. "That is a serious accusation, Ambassador. Do you have proof?" Marcus touched a control on his wrist device, and holographic footage filled the center of the chamber. The image showed a small Earth diplomatic craft, its hull painted with the universal symbols of peaceful intent, approaching a sleek Dominion warship. The recording clearly showed the Earth vessel transmitting standard greeting protocols. Then, without warning, the Dominion ship's weapons powered up and tore the diplomatic craft apart in seconds. 17 souls were on that vessel, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the shocked silence. 17 humans who believed in the promise of galactic cooperation. Their only crime was following the protocols this very council established. The Korvax delegate clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. This cannot be sanctioned action. The Dominion would not, wouldn't they? Marcus turned to face the assembly fully. How many of you have had your borders tested by Dominion patrols? How many have had to accept their demands to avoid conflict? The Dominion treats this council as their personal empire, and we all know it. Zulptar stood, his full height casting shadows across the chamber. Ambassador Chun, you forget yourself. The Dominion has shepherded this galaxy for millennia. We have maintained peace and order when chaos threatened to consume entire sectors. One unfortunate incident, murder, Marcus corrected. Not an incident, murder. And I demand justice according to council law. Section 47 of the Galactic Charter clearly states that any unprovoked attack on a diplomatic vessel is an act of war unless the aggressor makes full reparations and submits to council judgment. The tension in the chamber thickened like a physical presence. Marcus could feel the weight of history pressing down on this moment. No young species had ever challenged the Dominion so directly. Most waited centuries before finding their voice in the council. But Earth didn't have centuries. If they didn't establish themselves as equals now, they never would. You demand. Zulptar's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that somehow filled the entire chamber. Earth has been part of this council for less time than it takes some species to gestate their young. And you dare make demands? I dare because I must, Marcus replied, standing straighter. Because those 17 people had families, had dreams, had the right to life that this council supposedly guarantees to all citizens of member species. If their deaths mean nothing, then membership in this council means nothing. The Threnodai delegates' gaseous forms swirled in patterns of deep blue and silver, concern mixed with respect, if Marcus read the colors correctly. The human speaks truth. The Threnodai's harmonious voice resonated. The charter is clear. If the footage is authentic, do you question Earth's honesty? Marcus challenged, knowing he was pushing boundaries but unable to stop. The image of his son's face drove him forward. This was about more than 17 lives. It was about humanity's future among the stars. I question Earth's understanding of its place, Zulptar responded, descending from his platform. Each step shook the chamber floor. You were children, playing with technologies you barely comprehend, protected by treaties you had no part in creating. Perhaps the Dominion Patrol detected something your primitive sensors missed. Perhaps your diplomatic vessel carried hidden weapons or unauthorized technology. Then investigate. Marcus spread his arms wide. Send your best analysts. Examine every piece of debris. Interview our traffic controllers. We have nothing to hide. But do not dismiss our dead as acceptable casualties of your superiority complex. Gasps echoed again. No one spoke to the Dominion like this. But Marcus had studied history, not just human history, but galactic. Every empire thought itself eternal until someone stood up and said no more. The Vorthan ambassador extended a tentacle toward the central display. I would examine this evidence more closely. The council owes Earth that much at minimum. Other voices joined in, not many but enough. The younger species, those who remembered their own struggles under Dominion oversight. The middle-tier powers who chafed at constant reminders of their inferior status. Even some of the elder species who had grown concerned about Dominion increasingly aggressive policies. Zulptar's 4 eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that would have killed a lesser being. Very well. The council will investigate. But know this, Ambassador Chun. Earth has made its position clear today. You stand apart from the natural order. That rarely ends well for young species. The natural order changes, Marcus replied, meeting that terrible gaze without flinching. That's what makes it natural. Earth requests only justice, nothing more. But we will accept nothing less. He turned to address the full assembly one more time. Members of the council, I thank you for your time and attention. I trust in your wisdom to see truth prevail over might. The families of our 17 dead deserve that much. As Marcus walked back toward the chamber doors, he felt the weight of every gaze upon him. He had thrown down a gauntlet that could not be retrieved. Earth had announced itself as a species that would not bow to tradition or threats. The consequences would ripple across the galaxy like waves from a stone thrown into still water. The doors closed behind him with the same mechanical hiss, but everything had changed. In the corridor outside, Marcus's hands finally began to shake. He had either secured humanity's place among the stars or signed their death warrant. Time would tell which. His secure communicator buzzed with an encrypted message from Earth. His wife, checking in, making sure he was safe. He sent back a simple response. The die is cast. Tell our son, I remembered why I'm here. As he walked toward his quarters in the diplomatic section, Marcus didn't notice the shadow that detached itself from the wall and followed at a discreet distance. The game had begun, and Earth's rookie diplomat had just made the opening move against masters who had been playing for millennia. But Marcus Chun had something the Dominion couldn't understand, the desperate courage of a species with everything to lose and everything to prove. His son's face flashed in his mind again, and Marcus quickened his pace. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on. Earth deserved nothing less than his absolute best. The stars visible through the station's viewports seemed to pulse with new meaning. Each point of light represented a civilization, a history, a potential ally or enemy. Earth was out here now, truly among them, no longer protected by ignorance or insignificance. 3 days later, Marcus stood in his quarters, reviewing reports from Earth's intelligence services. The Dominion's response to his challenge had been swift and predictable. Economic pressures, subtle threats to Earth's trading partners, mysterious technical difficulties with humanity's ships passing through Dominion-controlled checkpoints. But something else had happened too. Messages of support, carefully encrypted and deniably sourced from species across the Council. The Korvax offered to share defensive shield harmonics. The Threnodidae provided intelligence on Dominion fleet movements. Even some species Marcus had never heard of reached out with offers of aid or simple words of encouragement. His personal communicator chimed with a priority message. Marcus's blood ran cold as he read it. A Dominion battle fleet had assembled near the border of human space. 12 ships, each capable of devastating a planet. The message was clear: withdraw the complaint or face the consequences. Marcus sat down heavily, feeling every one of his 53 years. He had known this moment would come, but not so soon. The Dominion was calling Earth's bluff, betting that one small species wouldn't risk annihilation for the principle of justice. He thought of the 17 dead, thought of his son, probably in his university classes right now, studying xenobiology with the bright-eyed optimism of youth. Thought of his wife, tending her garden in their apartment, growing earth flowers under alien suns. His hands moved across the communication console, drafting a response to the Galactic Council. Each word carried the weight of humanity's future. But Marcus had made his choice the moment he stood in that chamber. Earth would not back down, cannot back down, because if they did, they would forever be nothing more than subjects in someone else's empire. To the honored members of the Galactic Council, he began, his fingers steady now. Earth maintains its demand for justice. We call upon the Council to honor its own laws and principles. The Dominion's military positioning only reinforces our position, that they believe themselves above the law that governs us all. We await the Council's response, and trust in the wisdom of this body to prevent might from making right. He sent the message, knowing it would reach every corner of Council space within hours. Then, he composed another message, this one to Earth's Defense Command. It was time to activate contingency plans that everyone hoped would never be needed. As he worked, Marcus didn't know that halfway across the galaxy, his son was receiving his own visitors. military recruiters who spoke of duty and destiny, of humanity's need for its best and brightest to stand ready. The boy who had watched his father leave for the stars was about to become something else entirely. The pieces were moving on a board that spanned light years. And, somewhere in the cosmic dark, forces were aligning that would transform a father's quest for justice into a son's crusade for vengeance. But that story was still unfolding, written in stardust and blood across the infinite black. Marcus Chin finished his preparations and stood by his window, watching the stars. He had done what he could through diplomacy. Now it would be up to others to carry humanity's banner forward, by whatever means necessary. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, he felt a strange peace. Earth had found its voice among the stars. Whatever followed, they would face it with eyes wide open. The diplomatic game was ending. The real conflict was about to begin. The Dominion battle, fleet hung in space like predators circling wounded prey. 12 ships, each a masterpiece of destruction honed over millennia of conquest. Their hulls gleamed with the distinctive purple-black sheen of Dominion technology, surfaces that could deflect energy weapons and shrug off kinetic strikes that would shatter lesser vessels. Admiral Thekvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable truth, watching the blue marble of Earth rotate slowly in the distance. Four eyes tracked different displays simultaneously while his tactical mind processed possibilities. The humans had 3 days to withdraw their complaint. After that, he had authorization to begin protective intervention, a euphemism for systematic destruction of Earth's defensive capabilities. Admiral, his second-in-command approached, scales clicking in respectful deference. Intelligence reports increasing activity at Earth's military installations. They appear to be mobilizing their forces. Thekvar's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his kind. Let them. Their entire fleet consists of 47 vessels, none larger than our light cruisers. They have no energy shields, primitive weapons, and pilots who have never seen real combat. It would be merciful to end this quickly. But mercy was not the Dominion way. Earth needed to be an example, a reminder to other young species about the price of defiance. The Council's investigation was a farce. The Dominion controlled too many votes, held too much influence. But the humans had forced this public spectacle, and now they would pay for their arrogance. On Earth, in a bunker buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Sarah Ochoa studied the same tactical displays with very different eyes. Humanity's military leaders had gathered from across the globe, representing every nation and colony. The diversity in the room, skin colors, languages, uniforms, would have been impossible to imagine just decades ago. But alien contact had done what centuries of human politics couldn't: united Earth against a common threat. They're not even trying to hide their intentions, Admiral Patel observed, his voice carrying the clipped tones of a lifetime in service. 12 ships in attack formation. They want us to see them, to be afraid. Fear is a luxury we can't afford, Ochoa replied. She touched a control, bringing up Earth's defense grid. Operation Porcupine is ready. Every satellite, every orbital platform, every ground-based installation. If they want Earth, they'll pay for every meter. Colonel Zhang from the People's Liberation Army Space Force leaned forward. With respect, General, we all know the projections. Our weapons might damage their shields, might even destroy 1 or 2 ships if we're lucky. But 12 vessels of that class? We need a miracle. Or we need them to underestimate us, Ochoa countered. They think we're primitives with chemical rockets and nuclear warheads. They don't know about Project Prometheus. The room fell silent. Project Prometheus was beyond classified, a desperate attempt to reverse-engineer alien technology from a crash probe found in Antarctica. 3 years of humanity's best minds working in absolute secrecy, pushing the boundaries of human understanding. Is it ready? General Anderson from the European Defense Initiative asked quietly. One prototype, Ochoa admitted, untested in combat. But our simulations suggest it could work. Suggest, Admiral Patel repeated. That's thin hope to hang our species' survival on. It's the hope we have. Ochoa stood, her presence filling the room. But Prometheus isn't our only card. The Dominion expects us to fight like they do, ship to ship, matching firepower with firepower. But humans have always excelled at asymmetric warfare. It's time to remind the galaxy that we descended from persistence hunters who wore down prey through endurance and cunning. She brought up a new display, showing not Earth's military assets, but something else entirely. Civilian ships, cargohodes, mining vessels, transport craft, thousands of them scattered across the solar system and beyond. Every human ship has been quietly retrofitted with what weapons we could manage. Nothing that would stop a warship, but enough to be annoying. More importantly, they're equipped with quantum communication arrays. The Dominion thinks they're facing 47 military vessels. They're actually facing every human in space. The magnitude of the plan began to sink in. It wasn't about winning in any conventional sense. It was about making the cost of victory so high that even the Dominion would reconsider. And if they don't, Zhang asked, if they're willing to slaughter civilians? Then we make sure the entire galaxy sees it, Ochoa replied grimly. Ambassador Chun started this in the council chambers. We finish it in the court of public opinion. The Dominion rules through fear, but also through the perception of righteous authority. Genocide tends to tarnish that image. In his quarters on the council station, Marcus Chun received the encrypted updates with a heavy heart. He had known this was a possibility when he made his stand, but knowing and experiencing were different things. Through his window, he could see Dominion security forces taking positions throughout the diplomatic order. Not quite house arrest, but close. His communicator buzzed. A message from his son, routed through secure channels. Marcus's hands trembled as he opened it. Dad, I know you'll tell me not to do this, but I've enlisted. Special Forces Prometheus Division. Whatever that means. They say I have the right psychological profile. Whatever that means. Mom is furious, but she understands. We all understand. You stood up for what was right. Now my turn. I love you, Dad. Make them listen. We'll handle the rest. Marcus sat down hard, the message blurring as tears filled his eyes. His son, his brilliant boy who should have been studying xenobiology, preparing for a peaceful future among the stars. Now trained for war because his father had dared to demand justice. A soft chime announced a visitor. Marcus composed himself and opened the door to find Ambassador Vectal of the Korvax waiting. The crystalline being's faceted eyes reflected Marcus's image 1,000 times over. Ambassador Chun. Vectal's translated voice carried harmonics of concern. May I enter? I believe we should talk. Marcus stepped aside, noting that Vectal had come alone, unusual for a species that typically traveled in groups. Once the door sealed, the Korvax produced a small device that hummed quietly. Privacy shield, Vectal explained. The Dominion has many eyes and ears. Ambassador, I come with a message from what you might call concerned parties. The council vote on your complaint is tomorrow. The Dominion believes they have secured enough votes to dismiss it. Of course they have, Marcus replied bitterly. Justice is a luxury the powerful grant when convenient. Perhaps, but 17 species have committed to abstaining rather than vote against Earth. It's not enough to win, but it sends a message. More importantly, if hostilities commence, certain defensive technologies might accidentally be transmitted on open channels where human receivers might intercept them. Marcus studied the alien diplomat. Why? Why risk Dominion anger for a species you barely know? Vectal's crystalline structure chimed softly. Because every empire believes itself eternal. Ambassador. The Korvax were once like Earth, young, idealistic, challenging the established order. We learned to survive by bending. But perhaps it's time for someone to refuse to bend. Your species shows a resilience we haven't seen in millennia. Resilience, Marcus repeated. My people have another word for it. Stubbornness. Whatever you call it, it's what the galaxy needs. The Dominion has grown complacent, cruel. They mistake fear for respect, compliance for peace. Your 17 dead deserve justice. But more than that, the galaxy deserves better than eternal tyranny dressed in bureaucratic robes. After Vectal left, Marcus stood at his window again, watching the stars. Somewhere among those points of light, forces were gathering that would determine humanity's fate. He thought of his son, training for a war that should never have been necessary. Thought of General Ochoa and her desperate plans. Thought of 17 souls whose only crime was believing in the promise of peaceful contact. His reflection in the window looked older than his years, worn by the weight of representing 6 billion souls. But beneath the fatigue, something else burned. Determination. Humanity had walked out of Africa with nothing but sharp sticks and sharper minds. They had survived ice ages, plagues, wars that should have ended them. They had reached for the stars with primitive rockets held together by hope and mathematics. They would not kneel now. The next morning, the council chambers filled with a tension so thick it seemed to have physical weight. Every member species had sent representatives. Even minor affiliates who rarely attended had appeared, drawn by the historic nature of the moment. Earth versus the Dominion. David versus Goliath, played out on a galactic stage. Marcus entered with his head high, wearing the same suit he'd worn 3 days ago. Let them see human continuity, human determination. He took his place in the speaker's circle as High Arbitrator Zelptar called the session to order. The matter before us is Earth's complaint regarding the destruction of their diplomatic vessel, Zelptar intoned, his voice carrying no emotion. The Dominion investigation has concluded. Admiral Thekvar will present their findings. The Dominion Admiral materialized via hologram, broadcasting from his flagship. The message was clear. He was already in position to enforce whatever decision the Council reached. Honored Council members, Thekvar began. Our investigation reveals that the Earth vessel was operating with irregular energy signatures consistent with weapons testing. When approached for inspection, according to Statute 394b, they attempted to flee. Destruction was unfortunate, but justified under security protocols. Lies, Marcus said simply, not bothering to raise his voice. The single word cut through Thekvar's presentation like a blade. Ambassador Chun, you will have your opportunity to respond, Zelptar began. No, Marcus interrupted again, causing another stir. I'm done with protocols and procedures while the Dominion fleet sits poised to attack my world. Admiral Thekvar lies, and every being in this chamber knows it. Our vessel was following approved flight plans, transmitted on all required frequencies, and carried no weapons beyond standard navigational deflectors. He touched his controls, bringing up new evidence. Technical readouts, communication logs, even biological scans of the crew showing no elevated stress levels before the attack. Hardly the profile of people attempting to flee. But more than that, Marcus continued, I present to this council the words of Dominion Commander Kelvec, recorded by our vessel's emergency beacon in the moments before destruction. The chamber filled with audio, crystal clear despite the distance it had traveled. A voice speaking in Dominion battle tongue, not knowing the primitive human beacon was still transmitting, confirms 17 targets eliminated. The insects will earn their place. Glory to the eternal Dominion. Silence. Even species without auditory organs felt the weight of those words. Insects. Targets. Not a security action, but an execution. The Council has heard the evidence, Marcus said into the silence. Earth demands justice. If this body means anything, if your laws mean anything, you cannot ignore this. But I know many of you will. Fear is a powerful motivator, and the Dominion has cultivated it carefully. He turned, addressing not just the Council, but the recording devices he knew were transmitting across the galaxy. So let me be clear. Earth withdraws its complaint. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even Zelptar's composure cracked slightly. This was not expected. We withdraw it, Marcus continued, because we no longer recognize this council's authority to grant justice. An organization that allows its strongest member to murder with impunity is not a government, but a protection racket. Earth will seek its own justice. Ambassador, Zelptar rose, threat clear in his posture. Consider your words carefully. What you speak borders on declaration of war. Marcus laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. High Arbitrator, look at your own tactical displays. 12 Dominion warships aimed at my planet like a gun to our head. War was declared the moment you allowed them to position those vessels. We're simply acknowledging reality. He began walking toward the exit, then paused. But know this. Humanity has a saying, the blood of martyrs waters the tree of freedom. Those 17 souls will not be forgotten. And when historians write of this moment, they'll mark it as the beginning of the end of Dominion tyranny. Brave words from a dead man. Admiral Thekvar's hologram snarled. Your planet will burn as an example to others. Marcus turned back one final time. Admiral, you're going to discover something about humanity. We're very hard to kill, and we have long memories. He left the chamber in chaos. Representatives arguing, shouting, some calling for order while others demanded action. But Marcus knew the die was cast. In 3 days, the Dominion would attack. Earth would resist, and, win or lose, the galaxy would never be the same. As he reached his quarters, his communicator buzzed with a priority alert from Earth Defense Command. He opened it, expecting bad news. Instead, he found himself staring at technical specifications that made his breath catch. Project Prometheus, successfully tested 1 hour ago. A weapon that turned humanity's supposed weakness, their lack of energy shielding, into a strength. Because while every advanced species had spent millennia perfecting shields to stop energy weapons, they'd forgotten about the simple, brutal effectiveness of properly applied kinetic force. The specifications showed a delivery system that would make human history professors weep with ironic recognition. Take an asteroid, strap on engines, accelerate to significant fraction of light speed. No shields could stop pure physics. Marcus smiled grimly. David's sling was loaded. Now, they just needed someone brave enough to use it. In space, the Dominion fleet maintained its threatening formation, confident in their superiority. They had no idea that across Earth, in hidden bunkers and secret facilities, humanity was preparing to teach the galaxy a lesson as old as their species. Never underestimate the cornered ape with a sharp stick. The countdown had begun. 72 hours until the deadline. 72 hours until humanity stepped onto the galactic stage, not as subjects, but as players. Win or lose, nothing would ever be the same. And somewhere in the darkness between Earth and its enemies, a young man in the uniform of Earth's Special Forces studied his mission parameters. Marcus Chin's son had inherited more than his father's eyes. He'd inherited his sense of justice. And, unlike his diplomat father, he had been trained to deliver that justice at the point of a spear. The Dominion expected Earth to die quietly. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Lieutenant David Chun floated in the endless dark between stars, his specialized suit rendering him nearly invisible against the cosmic background. Around him, 39 other members of Prometheus Division maintained perfect formation, their biosignatures masked, their very existence a secret the Dominion couldn't imagine. The neural implants they'd received just weeks ago translated their thoughts into instantaneous communication, creating a hive mind efficiency that rivaled species who'd evolved telepathy over millions of years. But it was human will driving the network, human creativity solving problems in ways no alien tactician would predict. Target acquisition in 60 seconds, Captain Rodriguez's thoughts echoed in their shared consciousness. Remember, we're not here to destroy. We're here to send a message. David checked his weapon systems one final time. The suit was a marvel of reverse engineering and human ingenuity. Where alien species relied on energy shields and exotic particles, humans had gone back to basics. Stealth over strength, precision over power, and, most importantly, the ability to think like humans, chaotic, unpredictable, absolutely refusing to follow conventional rules of engagement. The Dominion supply vessel Eternal Provision cruised through space with the casual arrogance of a predator that had never known fear. Its skeleton crew of 50 maintained basic operations while automated systems handled the bulk of transport duties. Food, medical supplies, and ammunition for the fleet threatening Earth, a soft target that no sane species would dare attack. Humanity had left sanity behind the moment those 17 diplomats died. Execute, Rodriguez commanded. 40 humans became 40 ghosts, micro-thrusters firing in perfect synchronization. They approach from angles that shouldn't have been blind spots, exploiting psychological assumptions built into Dominion design. Why guard against attacks from above or below in three-dimensional space? Everyone knew combat happened along orbital planes. Everyone but humans. David's team hit the hull like shadows given form. Magnetic anchors held them in place, while cutting tools designed from stolen Korvax mining technology sliced through armor that had protected Dominion vessels for centuries. They were inside in 43 seconds, faster than the ship's automated systems could register a breach. The Dominion crew never stood a chance. Not because the humans killed them. Death would have been expected, understood within the framework of galactic warfare. Instead, the humans did something far more terrifying. They took them alive. 40 Dominion crew members, including Subcommander Vax'el, found themselves paralyzed by neural disruptors, conscious but helpless as humans moved through their ship like antibodies eliminating an infection. In 12 minutes, the Eternal Provision was under human control, its cargo liberated, its navigation systems reprogrammed. David stood on the bridge, studying the bound Dominion officer with eyes that held too much pain for someone so young. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a university student studying xenobiology. Then came his father's message, the news of the gathering fleet, the call to serve. The treatments that rewired his nervous system to interface with alien technology. The training that compressed years of special operations knowledge into days of agonizing neural downloads. All to stand here, staring at one of the beings responsible for pushing humanity to this point. Subcommander Vax'el, David spoke in perfect Dominion battle tongue, another gift of the neural implants. By the authority of Earth Defense Command, you and your crew are prisoners of war. You will be treated according to the Geneva Convention, adapted for interspecies conflict. Impossible. Vax'el managed through the paralysis. You are prey. You cannot. We just did, David interrupted. And this is only the beginning. Your supply lines, your communication relays, your assumption of superiority, all vulnerabilities you never thought to defend because no one ever dared attack them. He leaned closer, and Vax'el saw something in the human's eyes that made his four hearts skip in unison. Not hatred, not rage. Something far more dangerous, cold, calculated purpose. You killed 17 diplomats. Peace seekers who came to you with open hands. Did you think we would forget? Did you think we would forgive? David straightened, addressing the recording devices he knew were transmitting everything back to the Dominion fleet. Admiral Thekvar, I am Lieutenant David Chun, son of Ambassador Marcus Chun. You have 48 hours to withdraw from Earth space. This is your only warning. The message would take time to reach the fleet, but the psychological impact would be immediate. The Dominion's own supply vessel turned into a human propaganda tool. Worse, 40 Dominion soldiers taken alive, proving that humans understood concepts like mercy and restraint, concepts that made them infinitely more dangerous than simple savages. Back on Earth, General Ochoa watched the operation unfold through quantum-encrypted feeds. Around her, Earth's military leadership absorbed the implications. Prometheus Division had succeeded beyond their wildest projections, not just in capturing the ship, but in demonstrating capabilities the Dominion couldn't have imagined humans possessing. Phase 2, Admiral Patel asked quietly. Phase 2, Ochoa confirmed. Alert all civilian vessels. Operation Swarm is authorized. Across human space, the message spread like wildfire. Cargo haulers dumped their loads and began moving. Mining ships abandoned their claims. Personal yachts, colony shuttles, even outdated museum pieces. Anything with engines and life support began converging on predetermined coordinates. The Dominion expected to fight 47 warships. They were about to face 4,000 vessels crewed by humans who had nothing left to lose. On the council station, Marcus Chun sat in enforced isolation, Dominion security ensuring he had no contact with other diplomats. But they couldn't stop him from accessing public feeds, and what he saw made him smile for the first time in days. Across the Galactic network, footage from the Eternal Provision went viral in ways the Dominion couldn't control. Every species saw human soldiers treating prisoners with dignity, offering medical care, even apologizing for the inconvenience of capture. It shattered every preconception about the primitive Earth species. More importantly, it sparked something the Dominion hadn't faced in millennia: hope. The Threnodai released statements questioning Dominion military doctrine. The Korvax accidentally published defensive shield frequencies on public channels. Even species firmly under Dominion control began asking uncomfortable questions about why 12 warships were needed to pacify a single young species. Marcus's communicator, supposedly disabled, chirped with an encrypted message. He opened it, recognizing his wife's personal cipher. Her words were brief but carried the weight of worlds. David is safe. The galaxy is watching. Stand strong. He deleted the message and leaned back, allowing himself a moment of parental pride and terror in equal measure. His son, following his footsteps but on a very different path. Where Marcus fought with words in council chambers, David fought with actions among the stars. Admiral Thekvar received the message from the eternal provision with the kind of rage that had toppled civilizations. The main view screen on the inevitable truth cracked under the pressure of his grip as he watched human soldiers manhandle his people like common criminals. Analysis, he snarled at his tactical staff. The humans used unknown stealth technology. His chief analyst reported, scales pale with fear. No energy signatures, minimal heat dispersal. Our sensors literally cannot see them until they're already inside our shields. Impossible. They don't have shield technology, which is why they developed alternatives. Admiral, if they can do this to a supply ship, the implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every Dominion vessel suddenly seemed vulnerable. Centuries of tactical doctrine assumed enemies would meet them shield to shield, weapon to weapon. The humans had simply ignored those assumptions. Double the guard rotations, full sensor sweeps every 10 minutes, and prepare the fleet for immediate assault. We end this before they can. Admiral, the communications officer interrupted, unprecedented but necessary. We're receiving priority signals from across the sector. Human vessels, hundreds of them, all converging on our position. The tactical display updated, showing the impossible. Civilian ships, cargo haulers, mining vessels, an entire civilization mobilizing for war. They came from every direction, following no formation, acknowledging no central command structure. Chaos given form and purpose. They can't be serious, Thekvar's second-in-command muttered. Those aren't warships. Half of them don't even have weapons. All of them have engines, the chief analyst observed quietly. And at sufficient velocity, anything becomes a weapon. The awful truth settled over the bridge like a funeral shroud. The humans weren't planning to fight. They were planning to ram. 4,000 vessels turned into kinetic missiles, each one capable of overwhelming shields through sheer physics. Even if the Dominion destroyed 90% of them, the remainder would be enough. Contact High Command, Thekvar ordered. Request immediate reinforcements. Sir, High Command is already aware. They're ordering us to withdraw. What? The Admiral's roar shook the bridge. We do not retreat from primitives. High Arbitrator Zelktar's personal command, sir. The Council has called an emergency session. 17 species have filed formal protests over our positioning. The Korvax are threatening to withdraw from the Mutual Defense Treaty. The situation has become politically inconvenient. Thekvar stood frozen, for eyes struggling to process the impossible. In 3 days, a single species with no shields, no energy weapons, and no galactic standing had outmaneuvered the Dominion at every level. Military, political, psychological. The humans had fought a war unlike anything in Dominion experience. And they were winning. Admiral, the sensor officer called out, voice tight with controlled fear. Detecting massive energy buildup from Earth orbit. Configuration unknown. The view screen shifted to show Earth, that blue marble that had seemed so fragile. Now, something rose from behind its moon, a construction that defied easy categorization. Part ship, part weapon, part monument to human stubbornness. At its core, sensors detected an asteroid, 3 kilometers of solid rock and metal. Project Prometheus revealed itself to the galaxy. A railgun of impossible scale, designed to launch asteroids at appreciable fractions of light speed. No shields could stop it. No point defense could deflect it. Pure kinetic energy applied with human creativity. They wouldn't dare, someone whispered. But looking at the incoming swarm of civilian ships, at the footage of human soldiers treating prisoners with careful dignity while promising annihilation, at the political firestorm erupting across Council space, Thekvar knew the truth. They would absolutely dare. Fleet-wide order, he spoke, each word tasting of ashes and defeat. All vessels, prepare for strategic withdrawal. We return to Dominion space, pending diplomatic resolution. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of instruments. After 10,000 years of expansion, the Dominion had just blinked. On Earth, celebrations would come later. For now, there is only grim satisfaction as humanity watched the Dominion fleet begin its retreat. They had won this round, but everyone knew it was only the beginning. The galaxy had taken notice. Some would see them as heroes, others as a threat. All would recognize that humans could no longer be ignored. In his bunker, General Ochoa authorized the stand-down order that would send 4,000 civilian vessels back to their lives. Each one had been prepared to die for Earth. None had needed to. The mere threat, combined with political pressure and demonstrated capabilities, had achieved what no one thought possible. "What's our casualty report?" she asked her staff. 0 human deaths, General. 43 minor injuries from rapid deployment. The Dominion suffered 0 deaths, 137 prisoners taken across various operations. 0 deaths. After threatening war with the galaxy's dominant power, humanity had achieved victory without killing a single enemy. It wouldn't last, couldn't last. But for this moment, it was enough. Lieutenant David Chun stood on the bridge of the captured Eternal Provision, watching the Dominion fleet retreat on long-range sensors. His mission was complete, but he felt no satisfaction. This was only a reprieve. The Dominion would return, better prepared, more cautious, infinitely more dangerous. "Sir," Captain Rodriguez approached. "Orders from command. We're to escort our prisoners to the neutral station at Proxima Centauri. The Red Cross has agreed to process them according to interstellar law." "The Red Cross operates in space now?" David asked, allowing himself a small smile. "As of yesterday. Apparently, we're going to need it." David nodded, understanding the implications. Earth was preparing for a long conflict, building institutions and frameworks for interstellar war, even as they sought peace. It was thoroughly, depressingly human. "Lieutenant," Rodriguez continued, quieter now, "your father would be proud." "My father wanted peace," David replied, watching stars drift past. He stood up in that council and demanded justice through law, through civilization. "I just held a gun to their heads until they listened." "Maybe that's what humans bring to the galaxy," Rodriguez suggested. "The ability to speak softly and carry a big stick. Diplomacy backed by the willingness to do what's necessary." David considered this, thinking of the 17 dead diplomats who started this path. Thinking of his father, probably watching the same stars from his confinement. Thinking of humanity's future among species that have forgotten how to fight dirty because they've been comfortable for too long. "Elm," he ordered, "set course for Proxima Centauri. Let's show the galaxy how humans treat prisoners of war. With dignity, respect, and the implicit promise that we can be much worse if needed." The captured Dominion vessel turned toward its destination, carrying 40 prisoners who would spread stories across their empire. Stories of humans who fought like demons, but showed mercy like angels. Stories that would keep Dominion children awake at night, wondering if the monsters under their beds had blue skin and only 2 eyes. Earth had announced itself on the galactic stage not through conquest, but through cunning. Not through brutality, but through restraint. They had shown they could be reasonable. But they had also shown they could be something else when pushed. The galaxy would remember this week as the moment everything changed. The moment a young species looked at an ancient empire and said no. The moment diplomacy failed and humanity proved that evolution on a death world created a very particular kind of survivor. The war hadn't started. Not officially, but everyone knew it was coming. The Dominion would not forget this humiliation. Earth would not forget those 17 dead. And somewhere between memory and vengeance, the future of the galaxy would be written. For now, though, the stars were quiet. Earth spun on, blue and defiant. The Dominion fleet retreated to lick its wounds and plan its response. The Council debated and argued and accomplished nothing of substance. And in the space between, humans prepared for whatever came next. Because if there was one thing their history had taught them, it was that peace was always temporary. But with enough will, enough creativity, and enough refusal to accept defeat, even temporary peace could be transformed into lasting change. The game had only just begun. 6 months had passed since the Dominion fleet withdrew from Earth space. 6 months of uneasy peace, political maneuvering, and preparation for the storm everyone knew was coming. The galaxy watched and waited, split between those who admired humanity's audacity and those who feared what it represented. In the neutral zone around Kepler Station, Ambassador Marcus Chun sat across from his son for the first time since the crisis began. The meeting had been arranged through back channels, favors called in from sympathetic species who understood that sometimes personal moments mattered more than politics. David looked older. The boyish features Marcus remembered had been carved into something harder by training and combat. But when his son smiled, Marcus saw the child he used to ask endless questions about the stars. "You look tired, Dad," David said, pouring tea from a thermos. Real Earth tea, a luxury in deep space. "You look like a soldier," Marcus replied, accepting the cup gratefully. "Your mother would have opinions about that. She already does. Expressed them quite colorfully in her last message." David's smile faded. "How bad is it really? The political situation?" Marcus sighed, feeling everyone is 54 years. "The Council is fracturing. The Dominion's retreat showed they could be challenged, and now everyone's recalculating their positions. 17 species have formed what they're calling the Neutral Alliance, not quite supporting Earth, but no longer automatically backing the Dominion either. And the Dominion? Building 300 ships massed at their border stations. New weapons designed specifically to counter human tactics. They're calling it the Pacification Fleet. Marcus set down his cup, meeting his son's eyes. "They mean to end us, David. Not conquer. End. Make an example that will last 10,000 years." "We knew this was coming," David said quietly. "Prometheus Division has expanded to 400 operators. Every major nation has contributed their best. We've studied every piece of captured Dominion tech, developed countermeasures, trained until we can dismantle their ships in our sleep. 400 against 300 ships? 400 who think like humans, who fight like humans, who refuse to die like everyone expects." David leaned forward. "Dad, do you know why we really won the first engagement?" Marcus shook his head. "Because we remembered something every species forgets once they achieve spaceflight. Space is big, but ships are small. And inside those ships are living beings who need air, water, food. We didn't defeat their technology. We defeated their assumptions. They built their entire military doctrine around fighting other advanced species who followed the same rules. And humans don't follow rules," Marcus finished. "We make our own. Always have." David pulled out a secure tablet, showing his father classified footage. "Look at this. Last week we tested something new. We call it the Wasp Swarm." The video showed thousands of tiny objects, each no larger than a baseball, dispersing from a modified cargo container. They moved with purpose, coordinating through quantum entanglement, impossible to track individually. When they reached their target, a decommissioned Earth warship serving as a test platform, they attached like metallic insects. Within seconds, the ship's hull was compromised in 1,000 places. Life support failed. Electronics shorted. What had been a functional vessel became a tomb of dead metal floating in space. "Microdrones?" Marcus asked. "Worse. Self-replicating microdrones. Release one container, and within hours you have millions. They consume the target ship's hull to build more of themselves. By the time the crew realizes what's happening, it's too late." Marcus stared at the footage in horror. That's That's a war crime waiting to happen. No, it's survival, David corrected. The Dominion has energy weapons that can crack moons. They have biological weapons that can rewrite DNA. They have temporal distorters that can age a target to dust in seconds. We have creativity and the willingness to use it. There's a difference between defense and becoming the monster, Marcus warned. Is there? David's eyes hardened. They killed 17 diplomats to make a point. They positioned 12 warships to glass our planet. They've enslaved or destroyed hundreds of species over millennia. Maybe it's time someone became their monster. The words hung between them, father and son separated by more than a table. Marcus saw the path humanity was walking. Necessary, perhaps, but dark nonetheless. David saw only the need to protect Earth by any means necessary. Their reunion was interrupted by alarms screaming across the station. Both men stood, training taking over. Marcus reached for his diplomatic codes, while David's hand went to the concealed weapon every Prometheus operative carried. Alert! Dominion fleet movement detected. 300 vessels advancing toward Council space. All diplomatic personnel to emergency stations. It's starting, David said. No, Marcus corrected, reading the additional data flooding his screen. This is different. They're not heading for Earth. The tactical display showed the impossible. The Dominion pacification fleet, meant to crush humanity, was instead driving toward the Galactic core, toward the Council station itself, toward the heart of galactic civilization. They're going to take control directly, Marcus breathed, remove the Council entirely, and rule through pure military force. Within hours, the galaxy erupted into chaos. What had begun as a conflict between Earth and the Dominion transformed into something far larger. Species that had remained neutral suddenly found Dominion ships in their space, demanding immediate surrender. The pretense of Council governance evaporated like morning mist. On Earth, emergency sessions convened as humanity realized they were no longer the primary target. General Ochoa stood before the assembled leadership of United Earth, her expression grim. The Dominion has made a critical error, she announced. They've abandoned targeted response for general conquest. In trying to prevent other species from following Earth's example, they've given everyone a reason to resist. What are our options? President Martinez asked. We have one advantage. We're the only species that successfully fought them. Others are already reaching out through back channels. The Korvax, the Threnodidae, even some of the elder species who've been neutral for millennia. They want our help. To fight the Dominion, to teach them how to fight like humans. Ochoa brought up a new display. I'm proposing Operation Prometheus Fire. We share our tactics, our technology, our sheer bloody-mindedness with any species willing to stand against Dominion tyranny. That's giving away every advantage we have, Admiral Patel protested. No, Ochoa corrective. It's multiplying our advantages 1,000-fold. One human can be clever. A galaxy thinking like humans? That's the Dominion's nightmare made real. The vote was unanimous. Within days, human advisors were shipping out to a dozen worlds. Prometheus division operators became trainers, teaching alien species concepts their evolution never required. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric response, the art of making your enemy regret ever hearing your name. Lieutenant David Shun found himself on a Korvax colony ship, trying to explain human military philosophy to beings of living crystal who had never conceived of deliberate chaos as a tactical advantage. Your formations are too rigid, he told the assembled Korvax warriors through translation matrices. You think in harmonics, patterns, perfection. But war isn't perfect. War is messy, unpredictable, insane. You have to embrace that insanity. Ow! Commander Vexnil asked, his crystalline form resonating confusion. Our very nature seeks order. David thought for a moment, then pulled out a hammer from his equipment kit. Before anyone could react, he struck one of the decorative crystal formations, shattering it into 1,000 glittering pieces. The Korvax recoiled in horror at the destruction of beauty. But David knelt, gathering the fragments. Look, he said, holding up the broken pieces. Each fragment is still crystal. Still beautiful in its way, but Now, they're unpredictable. Scatter these in space, and they become a navigation hazard. Accelerate them, and they're weapons. Polish them, and they're sensors the enemy can't distinguish from debris. You don't have to stop being Korvax. You just have to be willing to break patterns when survival demands it. Slowly, understanding dawned. The Korvax had spent millennia perfecting defensive formations, creating shields of harmonic resonance that were works of art. But they'd never considered deliberately creating discord, using chaos as a weapon. "Show us," Vexnil said finally. "Show us how humans make war." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Humanity's gift to the cosmos wasn't advanced technology or superior firepower. It was a mindset, the willingness to do whatever was necessary, to think beyond conventional limitations, to turn every disadvantage into an opportunity. The Threnodai learned to use their gaseous forms for infiltration, flowing through ventilation systems like deadly air. The Vorthen discovered their tentacles were perfect for setting molecular-level booby traps. Even the ancient Prolari, who hadn't fought a war in 50,000 years, remembered that their telepathic abilities could be weaponized to induce paranoia and confusion. Meanwhile, the Dominion pacification fleet reached the Council Station. High Arbitrator Zelktar stood in his chambers, watching their approach with 4 eyes that held resignation and bitter satisfaction in equal measure. "You pushed too hard," he said to Admiral Thekvar's image on the communication screen. "Earth was containable. This is revolution. Revolution ends when we demonstrate the price of resistance," Thekvar replied. "Surrender the station, Arbitrator. Accept Dominion direct rule, and some semblance of the Council can remain." "Under your boots?" "I think not." Zelktar touched a control, and across the station, emergency protocols activated. "The Council dies today, Admiral, but from its ashes, something new rises. Something you helped create. Congratulations, you've united the galaxy. Against you." The Council Station's self-destruct countdown began as evacuation pods launched in every direction. Most carried diplomats and staff to safety, but some carried something far more dangerous. The complete records of Dominion atrocities over 10 millennia, broadcast on every frequency to every corner of the galaxy. Slave species learned their histories had been erased. Peaceful civilizations discovered they'd been manipulated into wars. Even Dominion client species realized they'd been bred for compliance through selective genocide. The truth, long suppressed, exploded across the galactic consciousness like a supernova. Marcus Chun watched from his evacuation pod as the station tore itself apart, taking 3 Dominion ships too close to escape the blast. Beside him, other ambassadors sat in shocked silence. The order they'd known, flawed as it was, had just ended. "What happens now?" someone asked. "Now," Marcus said quietly, "we find out if the galaxy is ready to grow up, to move beyond the rule of the strongest to something better. And if it's not ready?" Marcus thought of his son, teaching aliens to think like humans. Thought of Earth, standing defiant when everyone said to kneel. Thought of 17 diplomats whose deaths had started an avalanche that might reshape civilization. Then, we make it ready. One impossible victory at a time. The war had truly begun now. Not Earth versus the Dominion, but freedom versus tyranny on a galactic scale. The Dominion had overwhelming force, ancient weapons, and the habit of victory. But their enemies had something more dangerous. Human teachers showing them how to fight dirty, how to think outside evolutionary constraints, how to turn the enemy's strength against them. In his ready room, aboard the captured and renamed vessel Persistent Diplomat, David Chun received word of the Council Station's destruction and his father's survival. He allowed himself a moment of relief before turning to the task at hand. For Korvax's ships, 2 Threnodai cruisers, and a dozen smaller vessels from species he'd never heard of waited in formation. The first mixed-species fleet in galactic history, trained in human tactics, and ready to show the Dominion that their 10,000 years of dominance were over. "All ships," David broadcast, his words translated into a dozen languages instantly. "The enemy expects us to fight like civilized beings. Let's disappoint them. Formation chaos. Execute." The fleet scattered like startled birds, each ship following pre-planned, but seemingly random vectors. To Dominion sensors, it would look like panic. But each vessel knew exactly where it was going, what role it would play in the orchestrated mayhem about to unfold. The Dominion had awakened something they couldn't understand and couldn't defeat, the human spirit of resistance, now burning in the hearts of 100 species. They tried to crush one world and instead lit a fire that would consume their empire. David smiled, cold and sharp as the vacuum outside. His father had tried diplomacy and found it wanting. Now it was time for the other side of humanity's nature, the side that had climbed down from the trees with sharp sticks and sharper minds, ready to face any predator. The galaxy wanted to see human warfare. They were about to get a masterclass. Prometheus Actual to all units, David transmitted. Welcome to Guerrilla Warfare 101. Today's lesson, how to make an empire bleed. The ships vanished into the dark between stars, carrying death and hope in equal measure. The Dominion War had begun, but it wouldn't be fought on their terms. It would be fought on humanity's terms, dirty, clever, and absolutely unrelenting. And somewhere in the chaos, Marcus Chen's words echoed across the galaxy, one impossible victory at a time. The Battle of Kepler Station would be remembered as the moment the galaxy learned what total war meant in human terms. 3 years had passed since the Council's fall, 3 years of hit-and-run tactics, sabotage, and the slow bleeding of Dominion forces across 1,000 systems. But now, the Dominion had cornered the Alliance fleet at humanity's forward base, ready to end the rebellion in one crushing blow. Admiral Thekvar stood on his command deck, watching 500 Dominion warships encircle the pathetic gathering of rebel vessels. 130 ships of various species, most retrofitted with human weapons and tactics, huddled around the massive space station humanity had built as their logistics hub. Send the terms again, Thekvar ordered. Complete surrender. Submit to memory wipes and genetic compliance modification, or face annihilation. The response came not through official channels, but broadcast on every frequency, in every known language. It was a human voice, young and terrifyingly calm. Dominion Fleet, this is Colonel David Chun, commanding Allied forces. We've heard your terms. We prefer our own. Withdraw now, and we'll let you report your failure to your masters. Stay, and become an object lesson in why you should never corner a human. Thekvar's mandibles clicked in amusement. The terrorist spawn makes threats. How amusing. All ships begin bombardment pattern Omega. Leave nothing alive. But as Dominion weapons charged, space itself seemed to shimmer. What had appeared to be empty voids suddenly, filled with objects, thousands upon thousands of metallic spheres, each no larger than a human fist, spreading out like a cancer between the fleets. Mines, Thekvar's tactical officer reported, confused. But our shields, the spheres didn't explode. Instead, they began broadcasting. Every frequency, every channel, all carrying the same message, the names of the dead. Starting with the 17 diplomats, then every soul lost in the war, every species driven to extinction by Dominion rule. Millions of names, creating a cacophony that overwhelmed communication systems. Clear those channels. Thekvar ruwarit. We can't, sir. They're using quantum entanglement. The signal is coming from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. In the chaos of screaming names, the Allied fleet moved. Not in retreat, but in a formation no Dominion tactician recognized. Ships paired off, human vessels linking with alien ones, creating hybrid configurations that defied conventional design. David Chun stood on the bridge of the persistent Diplomat, now physically connected to a Korvax crystal ship. The merger of technologies had been another human innovation. Why fight separately when you could combine strengths? Human creativity merged with Korvax precision, creating weapons that neither species could have imagined alone. All units, execute Prometheus Final. Let's show them what happens when you unite the galaxy against you. The space around Kepler Station erupted into controlled chaos. Threnodized ships phased partially out of reality, becoming ghostly attackers that Dominion weapons couldn't lock onto. Vorthan vessels split into component parts, each tentacle ship becoming an independent fighter that swarmed larger targets. Human ships did what they did best, the unexpected. The Dominion had expected a desperate last stand. Instead, they got a demonstration of what 3 years of human military education could achieve. Every species fighting not as they always had, but as humans had taught them, dirty, creative, and with absolutely no regard for conventional warfare. But the masterpiece was yet to come. "Sir," the Dominion sensor officer's voice cracked with panic. "Detecting massive gravitational anomaly. Something's coming through. It's impossible." Space tore open in a way that violated physics. From the rift emerged not a ship, but a planet, a rogue world that humans had spent 2 years converting into the largest kinetic weapon ever conceived. Project Longshot, the natural evolution of their asteroid-slinging tactics, now revealed in all its insane glory. They weaponized a planet, someone whispered on the Dominion bridge. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Thekvar commanded, but it was like ordering someone to dodge gravity itself. The rogue planet's mass pulled at every ship, disrupting formations, creating chaos where there had been order. And in that chaos, the human-trained fleet struck like a school of piranha. Surgical strikes on specific targets, each attack designed not just to destroy, but to demoralize. They targeted command ships, leaving crews alive, but helpless. They disabled weapons, but left engines intact, forcing Dominion captains to choose between retreat and watching their helpless vessels be taken apart piece by piece. Marcus Chun watched the battle from the secure bunker on Kepler Station. His role as diplomat had evolved into something else. The voice of the Alliance, broadcasting on all channels to ensure the galaxy witnessed this moment. "Citizens of the galaxy," he spoke, his words carrying across light years. "You are witnessing the end of an era. For 10,000 years, the Dominion has ruled through fear. Today, that fear dies, not through superior firepower, but through unity, through the courage of species standing together, thinking together, fighting together." On cue, ships across the Allied fleet began broadcasting their own footage. Korvax and humans working side by side. Threnodidae teaching Vorthan their phase techniques. Even former Dominion client species who had defected, sharing their insider knowledge freely. The message was clear. The galaxy had united, and the Dominion's divide and conquer tactics were obsolete. Admiral Thekvar watched his tactical display in growing horror. His 500 ships were being taken apart by a force a quarter their size. Not through raw power, but through coordination and tactics that his million years of military tradition couldn't counter. Admiral, his second-in-command, approached carefully. "The fleet is requesting permission to retreat." "Retreat." Thekvar turned all 4 eyes on his subordinate. "The Dominion does not retreat." "Then, the Dominion dies here." A new voice cut through the bridge. On the main screen, David Chen appeared, broadcasting from his merged ship. Behind him stood beings of a dozen species, all wearing the same expression of grim determination. "You came here expecting to fight the last battle," David continued. "Congratulations. You're about to. But not the way you thought. Every ship you lose here weakens Dominion control elsewhere. Every crew that surrenders spreads the word that you can be beaten. You've already lost, Admiral. The question is how many have to die before you accept it. Sigvais Alpoildo. All ships, kamikaze protocols. If we die, we take them with us." But as his orders went out, something impossible happened. They weren't obeyed. Across the Dominion fleet, crews were refusing. The names of the dead still echoing on every channel had done their work. Soldiers who had followed orders blindly for centuries suddenly asked themselves if dying for Dominion pride was worth it. "Sir," the communications officer reported, voice hollow. 300 ships are powering down weapons. They're surrendering." The bridge fell silent except for the endless litany of the dead. Thekvar stood frozen, watching his empire crumble in real time. Not through defeat in battle, but through something far worse. His own forces choosing not to fight. "This is how tyranny dies." Marcus Chen's voice filled the silence. Not in grand explosions, but in the moment when people simply say no more. Admiral Thekvar, on behalf of the Galactic Alliance, I accept your fleet's surrender. I haven't surrendered. Dekvar Ruarid. No, David Chin's image replied. But your fleet has. And a commander without soldiers is just someone shouting at the stars. The remaining loyal Dominion ships, barely 100 now, found themselves surrounded. Not just by Alliance vessels, but by their own former comrades, who had chosen survival and change over pointless death. In the end, Thekvar did the only thing his pride would allow. He set his flagship to self-destruct and broadcast one final message to Dominion space. The insects have won. Avenge us. But even that gesture failed. Human electronic warfare specialists had long since infiltrated Dominion systems. His self-destruct was countered, his message redirected to Alliance channels. The mighty admiral who had come to crush rebellion found himself transported to a holding cell, kept safe despite his protests. Even enemies deserve the chance to see the new world being born. The Battle of Kepler Station ended not with destruction, but with the largest mass surrender in galactic history. 400 Dominion ships and their crews choosing life under new laws over death under old ones. The images spread across the galaxy faster than light. The Dominion could be beaten, could be converted, could be shown a better way. In the weeks that followed, Dominion control crumbled like a dam with too many cracks. Client species revolted. Occupied worlds threw off their chains. Even core Dominion worlds saw protests as citizens demanded to know why they were dying for an empire that no longer served any purpose but its own continuation. David Chun stood in what had once been the Dominion flagship's war room, now converted to Alliance strategic planning. Around him, beings of 50 different species worked together, sharing ideas that no single civilization could have conceived. Report from the Vorthen expedition, a Corvax officer announced. 3 more Dominion sectors have agreed to peaceful transition. They're asking for human advisors to help establish democratic institutions. Democracy, a Threnodai commander harmonized thoughtfully. Such a chaotic concept. Multiple voices, conflicting opinions, inefficient decision-making. Perfectly human. And perfectly effective, David replied. Because it means everyone has a stake in the outcome. Everyone has a voice. The Dominion fell because they forgot that ruling through fear only works until people realize they outnumber their oppressors. Marcus Chun entered, looking every one of his 57 years, but carrying himself with the energy of someone witnessing their life's work bear fruit. The provisional government is requesting your presence, Colonel. They're ready to sign the Galactic Freedom Charter. David looked at his father, seeing the diplomat who had started this path with 17 deaths and a demand for justice. You should be the one to witness this, Dad. You started it. We all started it. Marcus corrected. Every species that chose to stand rather than kneel. Every soldier who learned to think like a human. Every citizen who heard the names of the dead and decided enough was enough. I just lit the match. Together, father and son walked to the Great Hall where representatives of 90 species had gathered. Where once the Dominion had imposed order through force, now free beings chose cooperation through mutual benefit. The charter they signed was simple in concept, revolutionary.